Hello and welcome to
Hey, we like your pod.
And we're going to tell you why. Hi, it's Dawn here, and I'm joined as always by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett. And tonight, our very special guest, the Mike Spofford. Michael, how was your week? Thanks for joining us. Tell us how you are. It's so good to see you. Yeah, tell us about your week over there in Packers world.
Well, it's obviously it's not as enthusiastic and whatnot as we'd like it to be, coming off of the back-to-back losses on the West Coast road trips, and those road trips always take a lot out of me. Even having the bye week in between, trip to Vegas and a trip to Denver, and always feel like I'm still trying to catch up on some sleep. But the next game is almost here. It is at home. It's against the Vikings. I think everybody's starting to get pretty fired up the closer we get to Sunday.
And like you mentioned on Unscripted today, it's a noon game, so you get to get some sleep afterwards, which is nice. So happy about that.
Yeah, noon games from a work perspective, the noon games are always the best because it's as close to like sort of a normal, work day. It's like go in, a few hours before the game, and then we have all of our work to do afterwards. But, for a noon game, and when it's at home, I can usually get home in time to watch like the second half of the Sunday night game and kind of just unwind at the end of the night, with the NBC Sunday Night Football, and then call it a day and head back in on Monday.
So that kind of makes me like, not to jump into questions too fast here, but since it's kind of you brought it up, what does a game day look like for you? You said you have to be there a few hours beforehand. It's like, what are you doing before? What are you doing after? I'm really kind of curious about what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, the main, usually, like if it's a home game like this Sunday, like I'll try to get to the stadium, maybe I usually just leave my house about 3 hours before kickoff. Takes me about a half hour to get to like the parking lot, where I park, and make my way into the stadium and, get up to the press box. And then, I mean, the main thing for me before the game is when the inactives are announced at 90 minutes before kickoff. We have we put the list together, we post it on the site, our social team, socializes that. And usually, the way this season is going, it always seems to be there's a game time decision on somebody that you're wondering if so-and-so is going to play or not, so that inactive post at 90 minutes before kickoff is always a pretty big deal. And then, and then if there's some time, I'll cheat a little bit and kind of start answering a few insider inbox questions for the next morning's column, that, questions that maybe won't pertain to the game, or, maybe they pertain to like another game that's already finished, in the NFL that week, or something like that. And then, so answer a few of those, then kind of put that aside, knowing I'll be going back to that after the rest of my post-game coverage. And then it's 15 minutes before kickoff, we launch the live blog, and then I'm live blogging from start to finish. And then we get into all the post-game work afterwards, the press conferences, write the game recap and the column, and then the insider inbox, the Q&A. So, game days are a good, pretty good 12-hour day. And that's for a home game, without the travel involved. So.
And Dawn, you're muted. I can see you're trying to ask questions, so just heads up.
I just remembered. You do the live blocking for away games as well, right?
Yeah. And I did that even during the 2 years, 2020 and 2021, when our digital team was not traveling to the road games on the team charter because of the restrictions. I still would live blog the games off of television. But otherwise, and now that we're, last year we went back to traveling and we're continuing to travel again. So whether it's at Lambeau Field or on the road, like I'm live blogging from the press box.
Yeah, I love that. I jump on there once in a while. It seems like you have some regulars there. Have you gotten to know some of your pals over the years?
No, I mean, I certainly recognize some of the names and
Right.
and some of the submitters, but it's quite it's quite the process because I mean, basically, I just have my laptop. Half the screen is, kind of where I'm typing and posting. And then the other half is where all the comments from the fans are coming in. And then it's like I'm trying to maybe look and click on one or a question to answer or something to respond to. But it's like it's a constant scroll. I mean, it's like never
Yeah.
ending. I mean, I'm literally lucky if I can click on one out of every couple of hundred things that
sure.
that are submitted, because it's absolutely rapid fire, and particularly when we have a game like where we're not in prime time or on a national broadcast, where it's a regional broadcast, and there's a lot of the country that is not getting our game on television. The audience for the live blog goes like way up because people are trying to find a way to follow what's going on. They want to know what's up. They want they want all the updates as soon as they happen. And so yeah, the live blog audience for a game like last Sunday, where we were 325, but it was not the America's Game of the Week or whatever. It was a regional one where a whole lot of the country was not getting our game. And so we had a pretty large live blog audience last Sunday.
Right. It's even hard for me, like, just to watch the game and listen to it and type the question. So I can't imagine how it must be on your end because I'm trying to read what people said and what did they ask, so I don't ask the same thing. And I can't even imagine. I'm glad you kind of explained that. So you have hundreds of people all the time, right, on that site, probably thousands.
Yeah, I mean, like just for example, like the Denver game this last Sunday, when that game got into the second half, and the Packers were making a comeback and the game was close, like right at the end. I mean, the interface that we have sort of tells me how many live viewers are like in the blog at any given moment, and it was over 4,000.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so, and now not everybody is sending in comments, but even if you just take, a small fraction of those sending in comments on a regular basis, and it's like the comments are just, scrolling and like flying by, and, it's like it literally is just, if something like catches my eye, that I can click on it before it disappears from the screen, or, I mean, that's really, how it goes. And it's pretty much 100 miles an hour for those 3 hours. And then it's like, have to get on to my other, all my post-game duties after that. So
that's a lot. I bet the games go really fast though, because of that, because you're just multitasking.
Yeah. I mean, a game day is, just, it flies by. I mean, like I say, it ends up being like a 12-hour day, but it's not the same as a 12-hour Wednesday might be. It definitely zooms on by. So.
So I kind of jumped into like starting on questions here, but I just want to back up for a second and say, Dawn, how are you this week?
Oh, I know. We generally talk about how our weeks are going.
Yeah.
My week is off. No, I'm kidding. I'm still resting up. I'm still dealing with some health issues and taking it easy. I'm really supposed to be on bed rest right now, but I mostly have been. So I'm just trying to ride my way through it. And my cat is great. I did get out a couple times because I was getting, how you're just in the house for so much. And my friend picked me up and I bought some flowers for my garden because half of them died when I went to Wisconsin. Because I was supposed to only be gone for a week and I was gone for 3. Anyway, and then let's see. I got more toys for the cat, of course, because she doesn't have enough.
Busy for Tosh then.
I feel badly because I'm not I'm trying to play with her and stuff, and I
Mhm.
keep falling asleep. I'm like just falling asleep on my
Oh,
bed. So
that's
anyway,
rough.
it's great here. San Diego's great. Weather's great.
Nice.
Nothing to complain about. How was your week, Maddie?
Well, I'll just say real fast that tonight was my older kids' first band concert at their new school, and so playing with like an intermediate band, it was really cool. So it was good to see them up there with their hard work on display. And
Yeah.
other than that, it's been unseasonably warm here in Cincinnati this week, which has been delightful but also unsettling. Next week, though, we're going to coast back into like 40s and 50s, which is what I expect. So I'm good. I'm doing good. And again, excited to have Mike Spofford on our show.
I'm so excited to have Mike. Hey, Mike, are the colors, the fall colors, still happening, or are they done now? We're in Green Bay.
No, they're still pretty much in full force. I mean, I would say we're getting a little bit past the peak at this point, but there's still a lot of really nice like oranges and yellows and stuff. If you go out, you get outside of town, drive around on some of the highways and stuff, you can see some cool stuff. If you go south, they're still a little bit more in the peak season. The further north you get, you're kind of past it. But yeah, there's still a lot of really good color in Wisconsin right now for sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
This is approximately when I'm usually there. Matt and I went up for a game, for the home opener game. So I was there in September. I ended up staying longer than I had planned, but got home early October. And there were colors, but I imagine they're probably peaking about now. Yeah. I love that time of year there. It's my favorite.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool the last couple of weeks for sure.
I love it.
Excellent.
So did you do anything apart from Packers this week, Mike? Anything, or are you just all work and no play during the season?
Yeah, no, I mean it's pretty much all work. I mean, we did have the bye week recently, and I got a chance to went down to Madison and caught the Badger game against Iowa, which unfortunately was a loss for Wisconsin, but always fun to go to Camp Randall and sit in the crowd and do the whole jump around thing after the third quarter. And so that was my bye weekend. My wife and we caught up with my folks. My parents lived down in Platteville, which is where I grew up. And so we spent the weekend down there and hopped over to Madison on Saturday to catch the Badger game. So
nice.
Nice.
When you're in Madison, are there like restaurants you like to go to? Any spots you like to hit?
Not anywhere in particular, I guess. When we were on the way back from the game, we hit a spot it was in Mount Horeb, which is a small town just to the west of Madison, and it's a little brew pub called the Grumpy Troll. And I'm always up for to try out the local brews, and my dad usually is too. So we stopped there for a bite to eat and a couple of drinks, and drowned our Badger sorrows for a little while after that very disappointing performance against Iowa.
I actually love Mount Horeb. I have family there, and it's just it's a charming little town, man. I like that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a neat spot, and and the beer there was pretty good. So that always gets me to come back.
That sounds familiar. What's the decor going on? Do they have like trolls all over, or do they have? I was at some place.
Mount Horeb does. Yeah, Mount Horeb is like a big troll town. They have trolls lining their like main drag.
Okay, I think I've been there. That's ringing a bell from one of my visits to my brother years ago. So that's funny. Well, what we'd love to do for our audience, Mike Spofford, even though they probably already know you, just to make sure we're covering our bases, we like to start out with your Twitter, which is your Twitter biography, which I have a difficult time saying. So it is the Twitter. So your Twitter reads Mike Spofford at Mike Spofford, senior writer for Packers.com since 2006 and sports writer in Wisconsin since 1995. That's a long time. And of course, you live in Green Bay. So we have some questions. I don't even know where to begin. So let's talk about your writing a little. I'm going to go a little out of order here. So you mentioned UW Madison, so that got me thinking about schools. So did you study sports journalism so you could write? And did you want to cover football or some other sport, or what was your
Yeah,
dream?
I always wanted to get into sports journalism, and I didn't actually study it specifically until this one portion of my grad school work. I did my undergrad at Lawrence University in Appleton, where I actually double majored in English and Spanish.
Oh,
Um, and so I did a lot of writing, and then while there in school, worked on the school newspaper. I was the sports editor of the school paper for a couple of years. So had a
The
lot of fun.
Laurentian, the school paper, the
Yes, the
Laurentian.
Laurentian.
Yes.
So I had a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun doing that. Then graduated from Lawrence and went to get my master's specifically in journalism at Northwestern at the Medill School of Journalism. And so that program was divided into like 4 quarters of school, where you pick, sort of like different emphases in terms of, journalism work to study. And one of those quarters, I was able to do sports journalism. But I also actually did a politics quarter where I was in Washington, D.C. I did a legal quarter where I was covering the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago for class. And then the sports quarter that I did, we were lucky enough to have a couple of both one longtime reporter and a longtime editor from the Chicago Tribune were essentially our instructors for the grad school class in sports journalism. And so so we got to try lots of different things. Like they got us press passes to like the Western Open when the PGA came to the Chicago area, and we covered like minor league baseball out in Kane County, just outside of Chicago. We got to do that kind of stuff. And then for me, baseball has always been like the sport I loved. I envisioned myself being a baseball beat writer, quite frankly, at some point, but just never really went that direction. I ended up getting my first job out of grad school at the Wausau Daily Herald in north central Wisconsin, kind of, jack of all trades at the paper there, both as a writer and doing page layouts and all kinds of things. Really learned a lot in that job. I was at that newspaper for 3 years. Then I came to the Green Bay Press Gazette, and I was covering mainly the high schools and the college women's basketball in Green Bay for about 5.5 years. And did at both papers. I also did some Packers work as well. It wasn't like my primary duty, but I did do some Packers stuff, which included, actually, I was at Super Bowl 32 during my Wausau days. So I covered the Super Bowl with Favre against Elway,
wow.
Packers and Broncos back in January of 1998 at the end of the 97 season. So,
Wow.
But yeah, and then after the newspaper days, then I threw my hat in the ring when the Packers actually, for the first time, they were deciding to hire a full-time website writer. I believe they had launched the website in like 2003, but they had just had kind of part-timers and interns were the writing contributors to it, and were trying to move it along. And when they decided to make it a full-time position, I found out that they were looking, and I threw my hat in the ring. I was fortunate enough to get it in 2006. So I was the first full-time writer for Packers.com in 2006, and I've been there ever since.
So that's how it worked. It was when they launched their website, and so they needed a writer specific. That's very interesting. Okay, because I'm sorry, I just jumped right back in. Usually it's Matt's turn. I'm so excited. I just was wondering how that all evolved, but go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, well, one of the things that I said to Mike before we started tonight was just that I've been reading his stuff forever. So it's like, yeah, it might go back almost that far. In fact, back to when he started writing for this. It's been a long time I've been reading it.
Yeah.
And just a side note, also a Laurentian, a class of 2001, music education and trombone performance. So,
okay. So you were
very
in the
cool.
conservatory.
Yep.
Oh, it's like when you reacted to me saying Lawrence University, I was like, okay, what's the connection here?
Yep.
So, okay. So class of 01. So yeah,
Mhm.
I was class of 94. And as I said, English and Spanish double major. I have zero musical capabilities whatsoever. I enjoyed watching lots of musical performances and had plenty of friends that were involved in the music, but that was not my thing when I was at Lawrence. That's not what I went there for. So.
Very cool.
And
Did you ever get
baseball is
involved with?
really-
What's that, Don?
No, I was just remembering when Wes was on the show, he said baseball was your thing. What you like,
Yes.
you love baseball most. Yeah.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask about the baseball, but real quick, I'm just gonna ask you. I'm still on Lauren's stuff here for a second, Mike. Did you ever get involved with the Great Midwest Trivia Competition that happens in every January there?
Oh yeah, I mean we had we always had our group in the dorm that would hunker down and plow ahead that entire weekend and did the best we could in the on campus competition. There was one year where we came, I want to say maybe we took second in as far as the on campus teams one year, but yeah, speaking of needing to catch up on sleep after that 50 hours of nonstop trivia, it was awfully tough to go to class the following Monday. But no, that was always a great annual event. It was fun to be a part of.
Yeah, just an awesome Lawrence tradition. For people who aren't familiar, it starts on a Friday at 10 p.m. and goes all the way straight, like you said, like 50 hours all the way till midnight on Sunday as bananas. I actually ended up being one of the people who organized it and put it on in my last half of my time there. And
oh wow,
man,
cool!
What a good time! What a crazy time!
Yeah, absolutely nuts. But yeah, lots of fun for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned Don and I both mentioned baseball. So growing up, what were your teams? I assume the Packers because you're growing up in Platteville. And like, which sports did you enjoy the most, whether it's playing or watching or whatever?
Yeah, I mean the sport I played was baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually never played football outside of flag football. Like I have never put on a set of pads or a helmet to play a football game. Wasn't my thing at all. But yeah, I played baseball all the way through high school and in college. Played on Lawrence's baseball team. I was also a golfer. I played on my high school and college golf teams as well. So those were the sports I played. I've always been a fan of watching, just about anything. I enjoy watching, hockey, basketball, football, obviously baseball is still probably my favorite in terms of like attending in person to watch a game. As far as what teams I was a fan of, hopefully this isn't too long of a story, but growing up in Platteville, yes, I started out as a Packers fan. My dad is from New Jersey, and he had actually in the early 60s came to Wisconsin to go to Lawrence University in Appleton. And as soon as he arrived at Lawrence, he quickly became a Packer fan in the Lombardi era and everything. So as I was growing up, the Packer game is what was on Sundays, and Dad was a Packers fan. So that's where I started. However, when I was 11 years old, in the summer of 1984, the Chicago Bears began holding their training camp in Platteville. Mm-hmm. So through those years when I was like 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, I was running around the campus back home every summer getting all the autographs of all the players, just like the kids do here. I was chasing down Mike Ditka in a golf cart to get his autograph. Mm-hmm. I was chasing down Jim McMahon on a motor scooter to get his autograph. And then, of course, 1984, the Bears made the NFC Championship game. 1985, they won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Pretty easy as a young, impressionable preteen to become a fan of a very successful Chicago Bears team. So I was a Bears fan for quite a while. And but then as my dad likes to say, I came to my senses and eventually came back to Packer fandom, and with with the job and everything like that, and my affinity for the Bears is way in the past, but it's definitely a part of my past. And some of the first sports writing I did was actually when I was in high school. When I was in high school, there was a local publication that would do kind of a Chicago Bears like training camp preview, like pamphlet type of thing, just before the Bears came to town. And I actually wrote a couple of articles, as a high schooler, like for that pamphlet. So that was a lot of fun in terms of kind of getting started with a sports writing career after I was kind of done doing all the autograph hunting, and all of that while the Bears were winning that Super Bowl.
It's good to be able to confront your dark days, get them out into the open so we can just kind of like move past it for sure.
Like I say, I don't publicize it. I don't publicize it by any means with the job that I have now, but I don't lie about it either. It's like, hey, if you want me to tell you the story, yes, I actually still have I have a box downstairs in my basement that has all of my Chicago Bears autographs. I have an 8x10 autograph by Walter Payton, things like that I was able to get as a kid, and I've hung on to them. There, it's definitely a special time in my life when you grow up in a town of 10,000 people, and half of those 10,000 are the college students at the university. So Platteville is a very small town, and when an NFL team is coming to your town every summer, that was a big deal, and then when the Bears were successful, it's like ESPN was coming to Platteville to cover the Bears. When you're a kid and that's part of what's going on in your hometown, I soaked it all up for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all kidding aside, they were a really strong team. They were a very charismatic team. They had the Super Bowl shuffle, they were definitely darlings for a couple of years there. And so I can only imagine being a kid and them coming to town that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And and it kind of continued too. Like when I was then in high school, towards the end of my high school years, I had a part-time job at the local Dairy Queen in Platteville. And there was once the Bears came to town in the summer, it was almost like you could set your watch to it. We closed the Dairy Queen at 10 o'clock at night, but every night that the Bears were in town at 9:30, the entire offensive line would come in and order the double cheeseburgers and the triple cheeseburgers and all, and I was the guy doing the burgers in the back. I would see them start walking in and I would start firing the burgers out on the grill because they were ready to chow down at 9:30 at night before they had to go back, and make curfew at the dorm. So, things like that. It was if you lived in that town, you worked anywhere, the Bears were a part of who you were and what you did. And, getting to see players and know players just in a completely different setting from football itself. And, it was funny. One of my early years with the Packers, right around, I want to say 2007, 2008, somewhere in there, one of the assistant coaches on the offensive side was Joel Hilgenberg. And the first time I met him, I kind of, shook his hand. I said, yeah, I used to cook your brother burgers at Dairy Queen when he was in training camp in my hometown. So it's like you kind of take those stories with you everywhere. You never know who you're going to meet and who you're going to run into.
I love that. And so I would. Oh
yeah, I was going to say can I take it down? Is that okay? I'll take it. So real fast actually. So it takes a lot of cheeseburgers to power an O-line for sure. But anyhow, Joe, kind of is transitioning into a question that I like to really talk to reporters about. So he's asking, being that Mike was an autograph hunter, how hard is it to not ask guys who's interviewing for autographs? And that kind of goes with a theme that is, I'm really curious, how has being a reporter affected your fandom, specifically of the Packers in this case, but even more broadly to other sports potentially, and how you see that?
Yeah, It's a good question. I mean, as far as the autograph hunting part of it goes, I mean, once I kind of got out of those, teenage years and stuff, like, autographs are, it's not something that I even, really think about, or I certainly don't, certainly have never pursued one as, pursued autographs as a sports writer and things like that. I will say that in my, this is my 18th season with the Packers. The one autograph that I have asked for and received was actually after the Packers won the Super Bowl. I don't know if you remember, but the organization produced a Super Bowl kind of commemorative book that was called One, and the foreword of that book, because it related to the title One, it was about Charles Woodson's speech in the locker room in Chicago after the NFC Championship, where he was talking about one heart, one mind, and all this for one more game, right? So I actually worked with Charles, was sort of like his ghostwriter for the foreword about his speech, and kind of put something together like in his words and showed it to him, and he made some changes. So like we worked on that together for that portion of the book. And I wrote some of the other pieces of the book too, but this one in particular, I worked specifically with Charles on. And so then when the book was published, I got a copy of the book and I grabbed another copy and I actually delivered it to Charles myself when he was in the building in the off season. And I took my copy and I asked him, hey, would you mind signing like the page that you and I worked on together? And he happily did that for me. So, so that is the only autograph of a Packers player that I have covered, that I actually have. So, so that's that story. As far as your question with regard to the fandom part of it, I mean, I always say with my job covering the Packers for the team website and everything, the job is certainly a lot more fun if and when the Packers are winning, as opposed to, when you have a down season or when things aren't going well. It's a lot more enjoyable to cover a winning team in a position like mine. That being said, I always emphasize that whether the team is winning or losing, I'm always putting just as much effort into my job to cover the team and to provide analysis and to answer the fan questions and all of that, because my effort can't change based on, the wins and the losses, even though, you lose and you're kind of in a, maybe in a bad mood, or, you win, you're excited about it, you wonder what's next. I mean, there's certainly a part of that because of the organization that I work for, that's natural, but I always focus on making sure I put the same effort into the job, whether a win or a loss. As far as watching other sports, it's just it's a brain thing. Like I go to Brewers games at AmFam Field, and I keep my little scorecard and my brain is constantly like, I'm writing the story in my head of what I think the game story of the game would be if I have to work. But then the nice thing is when the game is over, I don't have to work and I don't have to actually write that story, even though I've just spent 9 innings thinking about it, because it's sort of an occupational hazard. It's how I watch sports, because my brain just naturally is always thinking of, okay, what are the key moments and what are the questions that I might ask about this, or, what would be, how would I frame a story based on, these being the key moments of a game and stuff. So it's, it doesn't take anything away from it for me, but it's literally just how my brain works when I watch games.
Yeah,
I love that.
It's like the lens through which you see it. Go ahead, Don. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've been in art and design my whole life, and I look at things, I'm always analyzing shapes and rearranging things, and I would paint that this way, I would do that. Yeah, I can't turn it off.
Right.
I can't turn it.
Yeah, and that's the way I am when I watch sports. And if I'm texting with my friends, if they're, we're watching games together, sort of over text message, and it's like, they're they're always getting my analysis as a sports writer as to what's going on, not so much as a fan of, what's going on, just because that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, as I say, that's what I'm like listening to music. Like tonight at the band concert that I mentioned, I'm thinking like, okay, what's happening here? Mentally transcribing some of the like melodies and stuff like that. Thinking like this person, this group should be doing this thing differently. Like analyzing it and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's like you can't shut it off. You have that part of your brain you've developed. Totally.
Love that. I love that. Wasn't expecting that. I had a similar question. How was your work as a beat reporter for the Packers? We're calling you a beat reporter. Do you call yourself beat reporters? Are you part of the beat reporter kind of?
I do. Yeah. I mean, it's not 100% the same as the way, other reporters cover the beat, but yeah, I mean, we're there every day. I consider myself very much a beat writer.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you're there for all the press conferences and things like that. So pressers. So yeah. So my question was similar. How does that affect your fandom? I mean, the other flip side of what you were talking about, I think, if you flipped that around and said, okay, is it affecting the way I look at the team? Do I know too much? Like, I always wonder about things like if you know too much how sausage is made, you wouldn't eat the sausage type of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
But no, I mean, to be honest, it's like I've been doing it for so long now that it's like that it's sort of like I don't know if I can say this quite right, but it's the team that I work for. It's the team that I work for and the team that I cover. So of course, like I want them to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so but it doesn't, it doesn't really affect anything. Like, I'm whether, it's like, just because I want, as that fan part of you, and also to make my job more enjoyable, I like to see the Packers win. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that I'm, starstruck when I'm interviewing Aaron Rodgers or something,
right.
It's because it's just kind of part of the job. So, I honestly, like, I enjoy taking, whether it's friends, family members, like, showing them around Lambeau and showing them maybe places inside the stadium that they wouldn't otherwise get to see. And, to see like fan reactions to, to things like that, because it's like, it's where I work. This is where I am every day. And in some respects, seeing the way like pure fans react to, maybe, being given a tour and being shown around and stuff, it reminds me, like, not necessarily to take for granted, like, where I work and what I do every day. And, it puts it in a little bit of perspective when you get to see how other people react to those kinds of things, because my reaction to things is it's never purely as a fan, because that's not who I am. That's not part of it. I mean, I cover the team, and yes, I want the team to win, but I don't, as far as where, those priorities, like Packer fan is like much lower on the list than everything that goes with my job.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously you have to put the fandom aside a lot of the time, and just like, you got to write this story, you got to focus on that. That's your job after all. So it makes a lot of sense, but in your heart, you're still a Packers fan, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, every game that I watch, every game that I cover, I would much rather see them win than see them lose. So.
Right. And I like how you said you get so much enjoyment. You feed off of the fans' enjoyment, like whether you're giving them a tour, or you're probably feeling it in the blog questions. Sorry, you don't call it blog.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So that's great. You can get that reinforcement, but you probably also feel the down, like when it's down, like, oh, we've got some work to do times, like maybe now.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, I think the hardest thing, because we've developed a lot of really good fan interaction, on the website with the insider inbox column, and I do like the live chats during the week, and I do the live blog during the games, and
Right.
we provide that fan interaction outlet, but one of the things that's that I would say is one of the tougher things with my job is that I can't just, I don't get to just do my work and cut myself off from the fans and all of like the negativity that they like to spew when things are not going well. It's like, I don't get to just ignore it. Like I have to read through the hundreds of emails every day to put the column together. And, when the game is not going well and, looking at the comments coming into the live blog, I mean, it's like, and I understand, like, trust me, I get it. Like, people get upset, they get emotional and all that. And that's part of being a fan. But I don't watch games that way. I can't watch games that way because, and I don't analyze games that way because first and foremost, my job is to cover the team and to try to provide the best analysis that I can based on my experience as to what I think is going on out there. So when things are not going well, and you don't get to just, you can't just like shut off all the negativity because the fan interaction is a big part of what we do. Yeah. That does make the job kind of tough at times.
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely a negative time for the fandom. Don and I are both on Twitter a lot, and so we're kind of swimming in it. And one thing about our podcast is we try to bring as much positivity as we can, but it's tricky right now. That's that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like I said, I get it. I mean, everybody wants their team to succeed. I mean, and it's always more fun to cheer for a winning team than to suffer through losses and whatnot. But to me, it's just it's all about perspective, and as long as you have the right perspective on it, then we can all get along.
And that's a thing that I've talked about in this show before, is that a thing I really appreciate about Packers Unscripted is that you guys always have a very level head. You talk about things with a sense of perspective, with a sense of like, this is what's happening. You're never overly negative. You guys avoid like really hot takes, which I really appreciate. So that's one reason why I'll never stop listening to your stuff and never stop reading your stuff, because it's good perspective every time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate hearing that, because that's something that we definitely strive for, and certainly I strive for it in everything that I write. It's like I want to try to bring bring a perspective that is that's reasonable, that's sort of like based in fact and based in reality, and this is kind of where things are, and if you're looking for, as I like to say, the loudmouth hot take artist, like Packers.com is not the place for you, and that's okay. I won't be offended, right? Like you can go find your loudmouth hot take artists, in all sorts of other corners of the internet, and if that's your thing, then fine, go for it. But you're not going to push me to become one of those just because. I'm not gonna say what you want to hear just because you want to hear it. That's not how I go about it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to anybody. Right. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm not gonna make anything up. I'm gonna give you what I think is my analysis of what's going on, and hopefully people can find that it's a perspective that's meaningful for them, or it's a perspective that, I didn't think of it that way, or that's a different way to kind of look at what's going on, as opposed to maybe what I heard over here. And I'm not one who's going to say my perspective is the only one. I think the best fans are the ones who get lots of analysis and perspective from all kinds of different angles, and see what they think in the final analysis.
Absolutely. Well, and I appreciate that. That's your mindset and your approach. I, really enjoy that. So Don's highlighting one of the questions we have in the chat here. We have a couple of funny ones, actually. So I don't know if you've seen this. It says, of the three of you, Wes, Rock, and yourself, who is the biggest practical joker?
I I don't know if any of us would necessarily be considered a practical joker, but Larry is definitely the joker of the trio because when we do, I mean, and this is the honest truth. When we do those 3 things videos, whether it's, from the field at training camp in the summer or when we're in the studio, like during the week in the regular season, Wes and I literally have absolutely no idea what Larry is going to say and when he is going to say it. Like it's basically like, okay, the 3 of us are standing there, the camera's not on yet, and he's like, okay, what are you going to talk about? Okay, what are you going to talk about? Okay, good, let's go. And so then it's like, he turns to me, I say my thing, and then, but we never know when he's going to interject or he's going to introduce something in a funny way. We don't know what story he's going to tell when it's his turn. And it makes it very entertaining, not only for us, but of course for the audience as well. And when you see Wes and I standing there, like laughing at whatever Larry says, it's a genuine reaction because we did not know he was going to say that. So we have a lot of fun with that, and we appreciate Larry's sense of humor.
He seems like a guy who has a good sense of mischief about him. That's for sure.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, I like that, and it keeps it like alive. If it was completely scary, I like that. That's really. I hope he never changes it. Never. I love listening to Wayne and Larry on the Packers radio. I turned the national broadcast off. I mean, I watch, but I listen to their
mute button.
Play-by-play. Yeah, I just love it so much. That's really cool.
Yeah,
so
I love listening to Larry. Larry analyze games and stuff. And that's the one thing I wish I could actually do while I'm covering the game would be to actually be able to listen to the radio broadcast. Except that when I'm in the press box, like we need to hear the announcements in the press box with regard to the injuries or other things that are going on. So, if I stick headphones in to like listen to the radio broadcast, like then I would miss potentially like, other things and to be able to obviously talk to my colleagues and stuff, because we're kind of like a team, running the website and everything like during the game. So that's one thing I wish I could do actually would be to listen to the live broadcast more often.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. It's a blast. I live for it.
It really is.
So I had some questions about, because you said you started writing in 1995, so that's more than 25 years ago. And of course, you mentioned the new website and when it came on in the early 2000s. So I wanted to ask you if you could kind of give us some perspective on how writing has changed over the years and how you interact with the social media team and graphics and all that. Or don't you?
Yeah. No, I do. I mean, the I don't post anything like on the Packers like social media accounts, but we're constantly in communication with them as far as the people on our website team, specifically the digital team. When something's going up on the website, then we have communication channels internally where we're letting people on the social media team know, like, hey, this story just went up, or this video just went up, or this is scheduled to go up at such and such a time. And so then they can plan out, the social media posts that relate to our content. So there's constant collaboration and communication as far as that goes. With regard to, my own writing career and how things have changed. I mean, obviously in the mid 90s when I first got into newspaper, I figured I would work for newspapers, for the rest of my life. Like that would be my career and everything. And to think that, now everything I write is online only, it's still surprising to me somewhat that what seems like a relatively short amount of time, like how much everything has changed. I mean, I would say that as far as the writing itself, probably the biggest thing that's changed is just the focus, the focus on brevity with a lot of stories, because so many people are reading, you know, on a mobile device, and they aren't going to sit there and scroll through, you know, like, you know, except for on a rare occasion, they're not on a regular basis going to scroll through like big long stories and, you know, read them all the way to the end. I mean, we actually had some metrics that this was several years ago now that we studied based on people's like reading habits and things like that. And it was pretty remarkable how the metrics that we got back, like what small percentage of people who would click on a story would actually read it all the way to the end. You know, so honestly, like in the online only world, unless you're dealing with a really, you know, in-depth or, you know, telling somebody's biographical story or something like that, you know, something that's a very expanded topic, the shorter you can be, the better, because, you know, once you get past, you know, for me, you know, it's kind of like 600, 800 words on a lot of stories. Once you get past that point, there's very few people who are actually reading at that, you know, all the way to the end, like reading at that stage. So the more you can condense the information, tell it quickly, tell it directly, provide the best analysis you can without being too wordy about it. You know, that's really what the goal is. And the better you can do that, then the faster you can get, you know, something up on the site, because the longer it takes you to write something and the longer it takes to get up on the site, you're missing viewers, you know, because, you know, growing up in the newspaper business, you know, I say growing up like as a, you know, young adult, young professional, growing up in the newspaper business, we always had our deadlines. It's like, okay, like I have to file that story by 11 o'clock because the presses are going to start at 11:30 and the newspaper's out the door after that. You know, when you're working in the newspaper business, there was always deadlines. You had the deadlines that you had to meet. I always say in the online world, your deadline was 20 minutes ago. You know, like,
Yeah.
You know, it's like you can't get something up fast enough, especially like after a game, for instance. The sooner you get something up, the more eyeballs you're going to get on it, because people are waiting for that. They see the push notification on their phone or whatever, and then they're clicking because they want to see what's in that story. And the longer it takes to get something up, you're missing a chunk of the audience, because the more time that goes by, then they're on to something else, and you know, their attention is elsewhere. So it's really about brevity and speed in the online world as best you can without, you know, compromising the quality of the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, 'cause a lot of people out there, they're going to throw stuff up quickly. They're going to jump into doing a video right after the show or after the, you know, game's over or whatever. It's absolutely.
Yeah, that's how it is. That's kind of the world. That's kind of the world that the world we live in now. I mean, just, you know, as an example, like if you follow my work, you know that, you know, like I'm live blogging the game. Wes is sitting next to me doing the quarter by quarter updates, the written updates that go up on the site. As soon as the game is over, I'm writing kind of what I call a topper or a bulletin that sort of is a quick wrap of just the basics and the final stats and everything that goes on top of Wes's quarter by quarter thing. And then both of us, you know, leave the press box. He goes to the locker room to talk to players. I go to the press conference area. So we kind of divide and conquer that way. And then the first thing that I'm writing after all the post-game interviews are done is the game recap, and what we have, the 5 takeaways from the Packers win or the Packers loss. And like these you know, like for example, you know, we just came off of 2 road trips, and I've been doing this, you know, this pattern for several years now that I can't even count. But like like on a road game, as soon as I get done with the press conferences, I go to the bus, because then the buses are going to be leaving to go to the airport. And my goal is always to get that game recap 5 takeaways story written and sent back to, you know, the home base so that the digital team can post it. I get that written and sent back before the bus gets to the airport.
Cool. Yeah.
Because then once I'm getting on the plane and, you never quite know what kind of internet connection you're going to have and all that kind of stuff. So I want to get that story done and back to them so that can get up on the site as quickly as possible, and then move on to some of the other work. But that's just an example of how fast you have to be in order to capture the audience that you want to capture.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really love that behind the scenes look. We really appreciate all you do, but it's really cool to hear how intense it is. It reminds me of the fashion industry too, and all the changes that happened there. It really did. Technology changed everything for us. But sorry, Matt, I just jumped on you again.
Oh, no. No apologies needed. No, I was gonna go back to you're talking about working with the social media team, and it feels like in this season they've kind of I don't want to say loosened up. I feel like that doesn't sound quite like I'm trying to say, but they seem a little more like I don't know. I just with looser, like funnier, maybe is the better word. Less serious in some of the stuff they're doing in a way that I think is like that people appreciate. On Twitter specifically, I'm thinking of here. Have you seen that? Is this a misperception? Do you think?
No, I mean, I think I think more recently there's been a little bit more of I guess maybe I'd call it like experimentation a little bit, and kind of, branching out a little bit from the traditional tone, but yet, I mean, as a Packers organization, like we're never going to be the Wild West when it comes to, whether it's the website or social media, like when it comes to representing the team and all of that. I mean, there's always going to be kind of a framework, within which you're working there. But yeah, I mean, I definitely see the experimentation and branching out a little bit. And we've done the same thing with the website, over time, over a long time. I mean, my first, 5 seasons with the team, 2006 through 2010, we had very little to no direct fan interaction, on the website. And then that has, slowly grown, over time to where it is now. So, my job is very different now than it was, 17 years ago when I first started with the website. So, so those kinds of things are constantly evolving. I mean, one thing, I mean, you're never going to see the Packers social media accounts, ridicule or make fun or take a shot at another team or anything like that. Like that's just not in the organization's DNA, and the social media is going to represent that, fully. But yeah, there are times where you can have a little fun and try to loosen up a little bit, and I think everybody's all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's gotten a lot of good reaction among the people who I interact with, definitely on Twitter and and in real life occasionally. I think it's appreciated when they do loosen up a little bit. So I guess pass the note on to them, let them know we like it. But
okay, we'll do.
Apart from that, I definitely think that the fans understand that. But the Packers are fairly, I don't know if conservative is the right word, but not as much like, say, the Chargers. The Chargers social media is definitely out there.
Yeah,
a lot of ridiculing other teams. Being kind of flashy like that. Like nobody thinks the Packers are going to be like that. Like that's totally understood. But yeah, when they do, make those little when the Packers social media team does kind of go a little bit past the kind of standard sort of conservative traditional sort of thing, it's appreciated. We like that.
We like it. Yeah. We like it. But it's kind of like what Mike said earlier. We can't always win. Every game, and if every team won every game, there wouldn't be competition, right? So but I do. Yeah,
No, I was just gonna say, I like to joke sometimes that there's this segment of the Packers fan base that believes the other 31 NFL teams exist for the sole purpose of losing to the Packers. That's the only reason that they're there, right? So if the Packers aren't winning, it's it's like this is just wrong. This is not how this is supposed to go, right? So, I don't know if perspective is ever going to reach that segment of the fan base, but
it might not.
But yeah, it's
The privilege of being a Packers fan.
Yes, it's part and parcel of who the Packers fan base is collectively. But there is that segment that is definitely a little different.
Absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, we've been chatting a while. We still have more questions, but some of them tie into our next segment, which is our superlative segment. Do you think it's time we should pivot?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think maybe just the one last question that we always ask people, Don, if you want to get that first, because that is such a good question. So do you want to take it, or should I?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. I was trying to throw it to you. I got it. So, Mike, it seems like your job would be super demanding. It definitely sounds like that. So, who in your life supports you the most so you can do all you do for us fans and for the Packers? Because we want to thank them. We appreciate what you do, and so we want to know who's supporting you in that.
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, it's absolutely my wife, because this job requires a lot of sacrifice. I mean, from the start of training camp to the end of the season, it's a lot of long hours, it's a lot of long weeks, it's a lot of road trips, being away from home, and my kids are both grown up now and adults, but when they were younger, that obviously you do get to be a bit of an absentee father in some respects, because not only when you're on the road, but then also, during the season when, you're not home for dinner a lot and all of that. So, so my wife has always really supported what I do, and even with a lot of the difficulties that it's created. So we actually just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary 2 months ago. So
congratulations!
Wow, happy anniversary!
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a fun year in that respect. But yeah, 100%. Like she's just had to take on so much more. Like I say, when the kids were younger, it was and I always kind of said, as like I talked before about how I kind of envisioned myself as a baseball beat writer. I couldn't imagine if that is the route that I had ended up going down. Like I don't know how I would have been able to raise a family or anything with the kind of travel that that would be involved with that. I mean, at least with this, it's like you're only gone on the weekends, and it's like, we fly the day before the game, we fly back literally right after the game. And so, I mean, it creates enough demands and enough sacrifices that way. So that was more than enough in terms of the strain that it needed to put on everybody else around me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Spofford.
Yeah, I don't know how baseball and basketball players or anyone associated with those teams do it. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
We have one game for football per week, but it's like every other day they're playing and they're traveling, and that would be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, with baseball, you think about having like a 3-city 10-game road trip kind of thing, where it's like you're just gone for this huge chunk of time, and then maybe you're back for a week, and then you're on the road for another week again. Like, I mean, it's something that like I said, like I couldn't imagine doing that and having a couple kids at home and trying to raise a family and stuff like that. So
yeah,
we thank your wife.
All right, Don.
Okay, there is a burning question that Joe has. I gotta, because I've been wondering the same thing. Who caught the fish on Mike's wall?
Oh yeah, that one, the one behind me there. That's actually that's a smallmouth bass that my son caught. Not this last summer, but summer of 22. And I don't know. I'll see if I can do this here. There's
Oh, we've
other,
got more up there.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
okay.
See, there's
Oh,
other fish
wow.
up there.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's four other fish there above the door. A couple of
That's
largemouth bass and a couple of nice sized crappie. And I actually caught 3 of those 4, and the other one was my mother-in-law. That's her fish. So yeah, but the one that's directly behind me right here is actually the most recent, and that was caught by my son in 2022.
All
I love
right.
that. Look, great mementos of family memories around your house. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that. So, Mike, do you have time to share some superlatives with us?
I suppose I can try.
Well, would you like to start out with one, or should we have Matt start out to get you warmed up?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
All right. Well, my first one this week, as I scroll quickly to it in the show document, as I keep talking about stuff. Okay, here we go. So my first of 3 that I have for this week is best analogy. So this goes to Perry Goldstein, who of course is one of the 2 people who do the Pax What She Said podcast. And she was talking about the situation currently. Of course, a lot of what people are talking about is like, where do we put the blame if we have to put blame somewhere with how things are going with the team, which is a totally understandable thing, and nobody has an answer, of course. But the way how Perry was talking about it, I appreciated, because this week has been a lot of people pointing fingers and trying to do this kind of thing. Perry took a different sort of approach in talking about it. She talked about how it's like Matt LaFleur is the chef, and maybe he's not getting the ingredients that he wants to make the dishes that he wants to do, but at the same time he still has to produce good food with what he has. But maybe his sous chef, and she went into this whole thing about like a sous chef maybe doesn't have the stuff that they're good at anymore, because they've been like given new responsibilities. And she spun this whole analogy out into a chef versus the person buying the ingredients versus the people in the kitchen with them. And it was like, it was an interesting way to like kind of recontextualize and think about, reframe the way we look at the situation. At least it was something unique this week that I appreciated. So kind of takes me around to the thing I wanted to ask before, Mike, but getting into that a little bit is, so Dawn and I are voracious content consumers. That's why we started this podcast, to be able to talk to people about it, share the things that we love. As a reporter, do you actually like check out any podcasts, read anybody else's writing, like anything like that? Or
I mean, mainly I keep up with I keep up with the writing of the other beat writers, just to just to see what kind of they're digging into, and to try to get their perspective and analysis, and stay on top of things that way. But honestly, as far as like other podcasts and things like that, I don't have the time or the headspace to keep up with too much of that. But mainly I'm a reader. I do read a lot of the written material by other beat writers that's written about the team.
That's about what I would have guessed. Yeah,
That makes sense.
So, like with the superlatives, Don and I are trying to like shout out the stuff from the week that we liked. So was there any like articles that maybe one of your colleagues wrote this week that you were particularly interested in, or like want to shout out?
Oh boy. That's a tough one.
You can think about it. We can come back to you on that.
Yeah, but, I'll have to think about that. Like I said, these I'm still like recovering from being on the road. The older I get, these long flights get to me. And I was a little bit sick last week too. Oof. So I was like just coming off of being sick when we like flew to Denver, and felt like I was finally kind of back to myself again. But yeah, sure. I'll have to think about that one for a minute.
Sure. Well, Don, do you have one that you want to do?
Being under the weather has affected my brain too. I swear it has affected my brain. I do. So I brought 2 superlatives this week, and they're let me just lay the groundwork out a little bit. Because of the depression and sadness I'm feeling about the team right now, I'm just kidding. To stay away from that negativity that sometimes happens on Twitter and social media after the team loses and stuff, I don't really like to get into I kind of avoid social media during the bad times, right? Not that I don't think it's appropriate or anything. I just I don't need all that negativity in my life. So what do? I turn to true crime because that's better. So in addition to being a nut about football and watching like every game, I'm into watching trials now. And so I thought I would bring, and this is kind of a downer, just so you know, these are kind of downer,
All right.
downer superlatives, but here we go. These relate to the NFL and the Packers and that kind of thing. So there is a relationship. So I'm going to give this one the most astonishing matricide. Do you know what a matricide is?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Ex-NFL player Sergio Brown allegedly killing his mother. And this is by Kimberly Speakman. I'm just going to give you a little synopsis of what happened, but it came into my news feed and all of that because he got arrested here in San Diego. So Sergio he played for the Colts, the Patriots, the Bucks, and the Jags. I think he was a safety. I thought he was a wide receiver, but I heard safety too, so I could be wrong. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. He's in jail. So those days are over. So sadly, Myrtle Brown, 73 years old, was found dead on September 16th, 2023. She was found unresponsive in a creek behind her home, and nobody knew what happened. And now Sergio Brown faces first-degree murder and concealing a homicide after leaving the country. So he went on down to Mexico, and then he tried to come back through the San Diego Border Patrol over there. So, yeah, so he was picked up and jailed. And there was an update today. Sergio, who was arrested in connection with his mother's death, was denied any kind of pretrial release or bail or anything because of the nature of the crime. So, yeah, he was 35 years old, so he's no longer playing. But the last time he was the last person seen with Myrtle Brown at that time on the 16th, and he actually booked a one-way ticket to Cancun. That's not real smart if you don't want to murder somebody. At least get a two-way. But then he tried to come back, which is really kind of silly. So this is why I follow true crime. It's actually quite amusing sometimes if you look at the funny sides of things. But I just thought of something because they mentioned Cook County. Do you have any juicy stories, Mike, about covering the federal building? Like, did you see any mobsters or mafia people in Chicago? That had to be crazy.
No, I did not. I was, as far as I know, I was not in a federal courtroom with any mobsters present. But one case that I covered was really entertaining and actually kind of fun to write about. It was being written about in the Chicago media as it was called the Point Break case. And if you remember the Keanu Reeves movie Point Break, which was the guys wearing like the presidential masks and like robbing places and stuff like that. So this case was actually it was about a father-son team that they were wearing like presidential masks and like knocking off banks and stuff like that. Like, and it was sort of in sort of southeastern Wisconsin and northeastern Illinois, kind of in that whole area. I think they even went as far north as Fond du Lac and like hit a bank there. But so I was actually in the courtroom for several days with the testimony and then the closing arguments and stuff like that. And
wow,
I mean, and the feds had like all this evidence on these guys. I mean, it was pretty overwhelming how how badly they had nailed these guys. And so then in a desperate attempt to save his son, the father took the stand on the last day of testimony and basically said, it was all me and my son had nothing to do with it. You can send me to prison and let him go, which of course didn't work. And they both went to prison for quite a while. I don't remember exactly what the sentences were, but literally like the crimes were right out of the Point Break movie. It was like the same masks, the same, MO, like the whole thing. And it was pretty interesting to cover a case like that.
Sounds fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. True crime is fascinating and entertaining. I'm sorry. Not making light of the death of Sergio Brown's mother or anything like that, but I was just for the heck of it, I kind of just did like this search how many NFL players were involved in crimes in 2020, so far in 2023, and like some really big crimes came up. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Oof.
yeah. So what's your next one, Maddie?
Yeah, so my next one is best analysis. So actually, I don't know, you might have seen this one, Mike. This was a article that Ben Solak wrote for The Ringer called "The Packers Are Barreling Toward a Jordan Love Dilemma." So the thing I liked about this is that there was some exposition, like kind of going over some stuff we all know, that there's a big decision the Packers will have to make about Jordan Love's contract, but it's a hard time to actually evaluate how he's doing. And then a lot of the meat of the article is digging into like why it's hard to evaluate what he's doing and try to isolate, if he's the person who's going to be our quarterback of the future. And what he did there is he provided a lot of like clips and like little film breakdowns to say like, well, here's an interception and here's an interception. And sure, they look kind of similar, but they're very different because on this one, this thing happened that made it go wrong, and something completely different happened on this one. And kind of dug into a thing that a lot of people are talking about this week about how, Matt LaFleur talks about everyone doing their 1/11th, and there've been so many plays where just one of those 11ths doesn't go right and it causes everything to crumble. And it's not like it's always the same person. It's not always the same position group. It's just random bad luck kind of like circulating around, any given play, whether on offense or defense, so it's just like the breakdown of any random 11th seems to be happening a lot. And like we were talking, Mike, about it's just so much luck that goes into, a winning season or a losing season, a team getting to the Super Bowl or just, falling flat in the playoffs. And so with a couple little things happening differently, the Packers could be, on a winning record right now. And so the article broke down a lot of those little things. It was really fascinating. And so you get this feeling that this article is going to be like just this analysis of these little things. But then he kind of says, so here's the thing. We have to put all that aside because in the end, let's look at what is Jordan Love at this point for the team? Like, what can we glean from like his very small sample size? Like, what can we say about this? And the writing from that point took a really interesting sort of turn in its tone because it became very much like, here's this point, but here's a counterpoint, but here's a counterpoint, but here's a counterpoint, and kind of going back and forth. And so just I think really laid out a lot of the thoughts that people have had and been talking about, trying to like grapple with and trying to talk about, kind of brought them together in a really interesting way. And I mean, Ben Solak's a great writer. Like, his stuff is always good. So this was a particularly good article from him. I really enjoyed it.
That sounds really interesting. I mean, and Matt LaFleur just said too, it can just, most games come down to two plays. It does seem like, even though we're getting walloped, it's like, it's not that we're so bad. There's just something like not coming together. Mm-hmm. And we could have won just as easily on several games. So as far as evaluating Jordan Love, I'm going to shy away from any conversations about that. I think it's too soon myself personally, too soon. But it's interesting because with all this going on, it would make it even more difficult. But Mike, you have any insights on how that's working? Like, didn't Brian? What did Goody say about? If you can recall, like how long it's going to take to evaluate Jordan because he hasn't had much chance.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really put any kind of a timeline on it. I mean, obviously when they reworked, kind of a new contract for him in the off season, which, kind of circumvented, the 5th year option for a first round draft pick because, that type of salary for Jordan Love's first year was going to be somewhat prohibitive, for the Packers, but yet, they want to give him, the time to develop and to show that, the guy of the future. So, there's this 2-year window right now, with Love being under contract this year and next year at a very reasonable and palatable price for the Packers as they try to figure this out. And I mean, I know people are anxious, it's like, okay, is he the guy? Is he not the guy? And, when are they going to have to decide on a contract and whatever. And, I don't necessarily think that, I mean, it certainly could happen within this first season or, during the off season after this first year. But it wouldn't entirely surprise me if we get well into year 2 of Jordan Love before a final decision is actually made. The Packers knew with Aaron Rodgers, he got about 8 or 9 games in as a starter in 2008. And, Ted Thompson and the personnel department and Mike McCarthy, the coaching staff, they were like, yep, we know this can be the guy. Let's give him a new deal. Let's move forward. It doesn't mean that Jordan Love is going to be on that same timeline and that the organization needs to be on that same timeline to make a decision. They're going to make sure that they make the right decision. And that's really what's most important. And to me, they have this 2-year window. Ultimately the decision could come at any time there, but I'm guessing it's going to come more later than sooner, just based on A, what we've seen so far, and B, the fact that there are so many players on this offense around Jordan Love that are so young right now. I mean, the whole idea going into this season was that, yes, you're going to be young at receiver, you're going to be young at tight end, but you're going to have essentially two all pros on the left side of your offensive line. And you're going to have 2 running backs that can really support this offense and really support Jordan Love. And it's like, well, Bakhtiari hasn't played. Aaron Jones has barely played. Elton Jenkins has missed time. Like, the guys who are not the young guys, the guys who were the veteran guys who were supposed to be the real stalwarts, the real anchors, the foundation of the offense around Jordan Love, those guys haven't been in there regularly. So, that impacts the timeline, I think, of the evaluation and where the organization goes with this. So it's nobody's fault. It's just it's the way things kind of fell. And 6 games in right now to a 17-game season. I mean, I've felt all along that regardless of what the record is, when once the calendar turns to late November into December, those games in January to finish up the regular season, whatever the record is, this Packers team with all of the young pieces on offense should look a lot different than it's looked so far in September and October. And if that doesn't happen, then we are having, a bit of a different conversation perhaps. But I think, I do think this offense is going to look quite different, with another handful of games under its belt.
Absolutely. And I really hope that they do take a good 2 years to make that decision, because, well, the Packers organization could clearly see after 8 or 9 games that, Rodgers was the guy. The fact of the matter is, like, though there seem to be these similarities with Love's situation, the surrounding supporting cast around Rodgers was very different than what Love is trying to make the best of. And I don't mean to say anything negative about, like, our skill position players, but like,
they're
the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about Rodgers taking over in 2008, I mean, Donald Driver was in, the 9th year of his career. Greg Jennings was in the 3rd year of his career. James Jones was in the 2nd year of his career. The situation, in terms of the offensive pieces around Aaron Rodgers were very different. I mean, what was really the downfall in 2008, because Rodgers, he played quite well. And, as the season went along, he was actually, putting together a lot of good scoring drives in crunch time to try to win games. But the defense down the stretch, completely fell apart and led to that, that 5-game losing streak late in the season in 2008, which then led to the whole change on defense with Bob Sanders being let go. And then Dom Capers was hired in 2009. And then you spent 2 first-round draft picks on defense with B.J. Raji and Clay Matthews in 2009. And then, and then the defense started to rebound and rebuild from there. So it's a very different, the only similarity, quite frankly, is the fact that Jordan Love sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years, just like Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for 3 years. Aside from that, there aren't a whole lot of similarities, quite frankly.
Exactly.
And Jordan hardly played any preseason games either. I mean, he was not out on the field like Rodgers was, even for preseason.
Love's rookie year was the pandemic season. There were no preseason games at all. So his first year with the team, he basically got no action, whatsoever, other than practice. And then if I recall, in 2021, I believe he missed one of the preseason games with an injury.
It's 1 or 2.
So that was an opportunity. That was missed there as well. So even when you look at preseason action, like Jordan Love did not play nearly as much in the preseason over those 3 years as Aaron Rodgers did. Aaron Rodgers got a lot more action in that respect.
Yep, absolutely.
I agree. Okay, thank you for that. I feel better. Maybe I won't have to turn to true crime when I go to bed tonight. Maybe I can listen to some Packers content like the old days. Okay, my second and final superlative along the same theme is the biggest loss of faith. And this is regarding a lifelong Packer fan. And speaking of that, I literally just I fell asleep and this show came on my YouTube and woke me up. So I watched it. That's how my week has been going. I didn't pursue this one. I just was like, here.
It came to you.
It came to me. I looked at the images. They were showing pictures of this couple and they're in Rodgers jerseys with 12. And I'm like, what's going on here? And so I woke up, propped myself up. This is the story of Jamie Faith, a diehard Packers fan. And this was from Dateline in a previous season. So this is some he was also featured on 48 Hours and all that. The plot to kill Jamie Faith. And it was a real twisty story, so I recommend it. It was also called Losing Faith on 2020. I mean, this was all over the place. Anyway, so this is about a shocking 2020 murder of an American Airlines executive outside his Dallas home. As the investigation into Jamie Faith's demise commenced, the events that led to his death and the identities of the ones responsible for it became clearer, leaving everyone baffled. Intrigued to know more about this harrowing case? Let's dig in and find out. Okay, I'm going to make this really quick. At the time of the incident, Jamie Faith was a technology director at American Airlines. The 49-year-old lived in Oak Cliff, Dallas, with his wife, Jennifer, and their dog, Maggie. Jamie was a Wisconsin native who previously worked as a web engineer, after which he was appointed as a senior manager at U.S. Airways in Tucson, blah, blah, blah. And they finally ended up with his executive job outside of Dallas. And the last known person who saw Jamie was his wife and their camera as they walked out of their home walking their dog Maggie around 7:30 a.m. Long story short, the neighbors picked up the audio and the cameras picked up the audio. This man was just shot dead walking his dog at 7:30 in the morning, and the wife wasn't. You can hear her screaming. But it was really a twisty story. It's really interesting. And it turns out that his wife was to blame. Okay, so his wife was to blame for luring an unsuspecting ex-special forces officer who was suffering from head trauma and PTSD and got lured into her web of lies. It's just like a crazy story. And it's not the first time she did it. Her other husband did survive, but it's just the craziest story. The only reason I bring it up, he's a Packers fan. We all need to check this story out and support justice for her. She is in prison, thankfully. Now she will never do this to somebody again, but sentenced to life in prison, and she's actually in a federal correction institute in Alabama, which is not a nice place to be. So there you go. So that was the biggest loss of faith, because that was just another loss of faith in the human race I had listening to this.
Been a rough week for you, Dawn.
It's a good story. It's really twisty. Stuff like this has taken my mind off of the situation with the Packers.
Wow. Mike, you get into any true crime stuff at all?
I like to watch some of the Netflix documentaries and some of the different stuff they do. I would say I watch more of that probably in the off season than I do during the season. But yeah, I like I do like the true crime stuff and especially I guess I would just say the ones that the ones where it's not necessarily about stuff that's like gory or scary or anything like that, but just like the nitty gritty details of like how the investigators like figure stuff out, and the evidence that they use and how they piece things together as far as like what happened. And, so yeah, I find that kind of stuff pretty cool.
It's very interesting, definitely. Yeah, like exploring like how the crime was committed, how the criminal mind works. It's very fascinating stuff.
I mean, I generally just like to watch trials, but then because of YouTube's algorithms, I get fed all this other stuff. But like, there's a trial that started this week that's really like one I've been waiting for years. So important. So I'm also entertained by that. But that one has had 20 shows and all that about podcasts about it and that kind of thing. It's the horrible murder of a law professor. I kind of like you, Mike. I like the law side of it. I don't like any of the gore. I have to even during the trials, I have to mute the medical examiner, and I can't watch any of that stuff. But this is a fascinating trial, and it's the third or fourth trial. They've already got 3 people in prison. It's a conspiracy. There's 4 other people that are probably allegedly involved, and that paid these guys to go murder this man. It was just a family dispute type of situation, and I'm learning about true crime. Most of it is the number one cause of murder or reason for murder is family issues, which is really frightening. Divorce and custody and that kind of thing, and that's what this was. So
wow. So it's one you're looking forward to seeing that trial start this week, is what you're saying, huh?
It's so good. The jury was sat yesterday, and I mean, I got chills. I had goosebumps all over my entire body. I was saying, and I've got this online community. Well, on YouTube, on my channel, Mike, I do some true crime stuff too. So I sometimes cover it. Or I'll pick apart interviews with police interviews or interrogations or testimonies, and I like to point out, like, look at her look that way, and what's she doing here, and with just the inconsistencies from when they did the police interrogation to when they're testifying and stuff like that. We have a lot of fun with it. It's just
I think if I hadn't gone to journalism school, I probably would have gone to law school like that. That would have been the next the next option for me, because I love that kind of stuff. Have you ever been, Dawn? Have you ever been a juror, like jury duty or anything like that?
I have been asked, and I've been asked so many times. I've been asked for grand jurors on a grand jury. I've been asked on federal, but because I have a lot of health problems, it's always at the worst time, and I can't commit. So one of these days I'm going to be on a jury. And I did have one. I don't know what it was all about, but it was like a federal thing, and it was done differently. They asked, and they said, it's not for now. It's going to be for, I think, November. So I'm still waiting to see, if they're going to contact me, but I don't know if I can hold up. It just depends on the length of the trial and that kind of thing. I was never interested in football, never interested in true crime, and now I'm obsessed with both of them. But I was supposed to be a lawyer too instead of a designer, and but it would never have been. I could not have handled working in criminal law. There's no way I don't think I could do that. I'm
I was
too, yeah.
I was just gonna say I was actually the foreperson on a jury once. So
Oh, fun.
as somebody who, it was just like a 1-day trial, and it was
Okay.
Brown County, the Brown County courthouse here in Green Bay, and it was a 1-day trial for this like drug dealer who he had actually become like an informant for the Brown County task force, but then he kept like blowing them off every time that they needed him to like, set up a bust or, to like work with them. And he kept like blowing them off and stuff. And so then they decided, okay, like we're throwing this agreement out the window. Now we're actually going to prosecute you. So since he wasn't holding up his end of the agreement to be an informant and everything, they decided they tossed him in jail. It was not a difficult case to reach a guilty verdict, put it that way.
It's interesting you were the foreman. Did they appoint you or did the jurors decide on you?
No, we just, I was actually after we did like, when we were doing the deliberations and stuff then, they kind of just like selected me, and it was like, okay, that was fine. And so I actually got to like stand up and like read the verdict at the end, my little real life like true crime piece was, being a foreperson on a jury in a drug case in Brown County. So
I know for a fact I'm going to be on a big jury one of these days. I can be really like, I can be counted on to follow the law and the evidence. Really, I mean, I'm the biggest critic. Like even when I know somebody's guilty and I'm watching their trial because I just want to see it happen, I'll still the defense and the prosecutions have to do their job, because if they don't, we're in trouble. We're all in trouble.
Yep.
And that's why they make it your civic duty. Did you follow the whole Taylor business thing?
I did not know. I mean, I know some of like the basics of it, but I didn't follow it in any kind of like a detailed way. No.
Yeah. That trial was streamed too, live streamed. So
okay.
We got to see her in action, the whole thing, the whole mess.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, she needs, I think she needs not prison, but to go to a hospital and get help, but whatever. Another Bears fan, maybe a Packers fan for a hot minute there. Anywho, here we go. Mikey, I'm sorry, Mikey. Maddie, so you do all three of your...
Okay, so two things real fast. One is that Mike, you've been so generous with your time. I just want to say thank you for that.
It's getting late.
We've gone real long here, and you've hung in. Thank you so much.
Oh no, you're welcome. No problem.
Appreciate that, man. So I have one more last superlative. I can make it really fast, but before we do, Mike, did you have anyone you wanted to shout out before we got to the last one here?
Oh boy, I mean, it's hard to say. I will say like one written piece that I make sure to read every week, as far as keeping up with the coverage, is it's actually kind of related to one that I do. Like every Tuesday after a game, I post what I call my what you might have missed, which is has video clips of certain plays and kind of showing showing things, whether it's a block or this or that, as the title says, what you might have missed. It's something that isn't necessarily pointed out on the broadcast, or you wouldn't see it unless you were specifically looking for it. So I like to show those kinds of things in the film breakdown, and I enjoy going through the film and seeing those things for myself, because you certainly don't see them all from the press box. So one other piece that I make sure to read every week is Pete Doherty and Eric Baranchik from the Green Bay Press-Gazette. Now, I don't know Eric personally, but I do know Pete because I worked at the Press-Gazette, back in the day, and I've known Pete for a really long time. They have a written piece that they do every week where they describe, some of the some of the things that they see when they break down the film and look at things more closely. And I always make sure, I always make sure to read that because I think there's always some good detail in there. Some good, some bad, but definitely a lot of detail in there that that can always help me learn something about the game I just watched, or even just learn something about football that that may be again, a perspective or an angle that I hadn't really looked at before. So I always enjoy that as a written piece, just because it kind of gets down into the details and some of the nitty gritty.
That is a solid recommendation, Mike. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the link to that. Sorry, my cough is starting to go crazy here. In our show notes, so everyone can look them up too. I love your "What You Might Have Missed" segment too. I love that.
It's one of my favorite things on the website.
I know.
I love that. Yeah, it's really good stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that. It's fun to do. There's a fair amount of work that goes into it, and I tip my cap to some other members of our digital team that help with the technical side of things with regard to putting those video clips together. But it's fun to do, and I enjoy kind of diving into the film. Sometimes I wish I had more time to do it, but it's like have to use the time that I can and get that piece put together, and then move on to the next.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, like I mentioned, I have one more, and a quick side note about film. If you ever want any recommendations for really good film people, Mike, that are doing stuff out there you might not be seeing because it's more like on Twitter and stuff, dude, let me know. I got some people you should check out doing good work. But anyhow, man, I got one last one. So I'll just say, Mike, if you ever wade into like the podcast, content waters out there, if you're to start at one place, this is the podcast for you, man. It's called Blue 58. It's by John Meerdink, and it's just it's solo show. So just him talking about things, but it's always like full of really good information, good perspective, and it's always really short because he makes them like 30 minutes at the most, with the idea that if you should be able to listen to it on the way to work and like be able to finish an entire episode. So really good stuff this week. What John Meerdink did was he approached this question we're grappling with what's going wrong with the team in a like sort of a Socratic dialectic method, because he did it as a thought experiment. Like, let's say you're Mark Murphy and you're trying to figure out what's going on. So you talk to like the big three people. You talk to Goody, to LaFleur, and to Jordan Love. You have them each come to your office one at a time, and you let them like give their case for like why they're holding up their end of the bargain. So like it starts with him kind of saying what they might say. So like them presenting sort of like the argument in favor of them doing good work, and then he presents sort of like what maybe Mark Murphy might be saying in response, then like, but here's the things that like where the shortcomings are. So by taking this sort of like approach to look at like the positive, the negative, and sort of like a dialectic way, like I mentioned, it was really interesting. It was a great thought experiment. And I'll mention there was a really funny introduction into it where he talked about what it would be like to be Mark Murphy waking up in the morning and getting ready for work. I posted that on Twitter. Folks should check it out. It was very funny, but suffice to say, John Meerdink brings really great podcasts, usually twice a week during the season. I think it's usually once a week out of season. But if you are ever going to start anywhere with a podcast, Mike, that is the one. Blue 58.
He's the one.
All right.
So intelligent.
Yeah.
So, all right. Don, Mike, final thoughts. What do you guys got?
Well, thank you, Mike, for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it. It was great.
Yeah,
You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, it's good to meet you guys. Thanks for having me.
You too. All right.
So,
well, I'll just go ahead, Don. Yeah.
Take it away, Maddie.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, it's not the most fun time to be a Packers fan, but this too shall pass, folks. We're fans, and we're going to be by the team, thick or thin or whatever. I'm saying just hang in there. Don't let the small scale, the day to day, the week to week get you down too much, because on the larger sort of scale, we're still fans of an amazing team with a great history and well run. That's going to be seeing better days, I'm sure, soon. So those are my final thoughts before I get into the show closing, and here we go. Folks, make sure you're following Mike Spofford, not just on Twitter, but like really his work that he does for Packers.com. It's fantastic. Honestly, I'm not just saying this because you're here, Mike, but like really one of the best in the business, just outstanding stuff. So check out his stuff, guys, Peckers.com.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah, no, we appreciate you. So friends, of course, you'll find links in our show description for everyone we mentioned. So please check it out. Also, we'd love to have a chance to interview you and shout you out if you're a subscriber and a football fan. If you'd like to nominate someone to be a guest on our podcast, please let us know. Our DMs are open on all the social platforms. And folks, when you subscribe to our podcast, you help us to keep spreading the love in our community. And the best way to help this podcast grow is by sharing it with your friends and family.
Yes, Maddie, that's right, because we love you. We're so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL. We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod, and we look forward to seeing you next week on
Hey, we like your pod.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.